take you back now to our breaking news coverage, because it has been another dark day for residents in various parts of the country, and now Eskom escalating load shedding from stage 4 to 6. It is the first time that this has happened in South Africa. The utility says a technical problem at the Medupi power station is affecting generating capacity. Our reporter Samgele Maseko is standing by from Eskom headquarters, Megawatt Park here in Johannesburg, with a live update. So Samgele, as in with any other crisis, people look for the leadership. Where are the leaders responsible for this?
Well, indeed, Thembekile, the leaders of the power utility, Eskom, and the Department of Public Enterprises are here at Megawatt Park. We're here at the IGCC office, basically, of where everything takes place. This is the ops center for Eskom. I'm going to bring in the COO, Jan, to explain to us, South Africans, the issue of the grid, what's going on. Mr. Jan, what's going on with the grid? Which power stations are down, and what led to stage 6 that we're currently facing now?
I believe there are a few issues that we need to first discuss. The one being our existing system, our coal-fired power plant, is unreliable and unpredictable. And the reason being is we haven't done proper maintenance over the last, I would say, decade or so. You know, and also what's important, our average coal-fired power plant is 37 years old. Now, if you take a body, any body needs to be looked after. So as and when you get older, you need to look more often at this body. And when you find something, you've got to do something about it. It is something we haven't done. So this is why our coal-fired power plant is unpredictable and unreliable. So we have quite a number of units that is on unplanned breakdowns at this point in time. As a matter of fact, if you take the last, I would say 8 days, we lost in excess of 12 units, of which half of them has been due to boiler tube leaks. And when you lose a unit because of a boiler tube leak, it takes some time to fix it. So you've got to cool down the boiler, then you've got to look where the leaks are, you've got to fix it, and then you bring it back. So important, that's where we find ourselves. So that is a cause. Then over the last few days, we had excessive rains. Some of our power stations have been flooded. What's also important is, if you take this morning, Kriel mine has been flooded completely. So the conveyor, we received no coal, not a kilogram of coal on the conveyors. That meant we had to shut down two of the units in the power station, and we had to reduce the others because of a lack of coal. As I said, we had then floods in Camden, Letaba, Kendal, as well as Tetuka. So that made it very, very difficult. And when you have these excessive rains, that makes your coal handling extremely difficult. We have doubled up on our resources. We're doing whatever we can, but it's a real challenge. Just this morning, we lost 4,000 megawatts because of this excess rain. And then I believe the last issue that has put us in the position that we are now, pardon me, for stage 6 load shedding, is we picked up a problem at Medupi, where we lost electrical cable supply, with electrical supply, 2 cables, that is feeding the inclines, that's taking the coal into the bunkers and then into the power station. So that took us some time to resolve. The investigation is ongoing, why has happened, but as we speak, the coal is feeding into the power station. So that's where we find ourselves.
As South Africans, I'm just going to ask you to step out a bit and just take us through the generation station's capacity and what's currently ongoing, particularly when you look at Medupi and when you go look at Camden and Kriel as well. Just take us as to why some of those bars are empty as composed to others which have higher levels.
I think what I've referred to, if you take Kriel power station, they're on top. So the bars means per unit, and because of the flooding this morning of the mine, you can see 2 of those units there's no colouring in it. So it means those units are not producing at this point in time. And for the rest, we had to cut down on the output, on the capacity. If you look then at Medupi, we picked up problems, what I've just explained, with the coal that we couldn't feed in. So as we speak, so we're busy filling the bunkers. So during the night and early morning, that will start pick up. So what you see here basically is each and every power station, the number of units, and how it's producing electricity at this point in time.
So what can South Africans draw from this explanation that you've given us today, particularly looking that some of them woke up this morning being load shed, they go to bed tonight being load shed? What can they expect from Eskom to try and resolve this issue of load shedding going into the future, and knowing that coal is basically unreliable? How do you then diversify your energy generation?
Look, I believe what's important is currently we find ourselves at stage 6. As you see, we monitor continuously what is happening. So around about between 9 and 10 tonight, we will have a look and then assess the situation to see if we continue with load shedding after 11 o'clock or do we cut back. At this point in time, there are some positive signs, but I don't want to make any promises. So that's where we find ourselves. How do we see tomorrow? We will assess again the situation tomorrow and see what's going on. If you look on this side, here basically we're looking at our emergencies, our dams. So another reason why we had to implement load shedding stage 6 is to preserve our emergencies. Because of the situation we found ourselves this morning, we had to burn quite a lot of diesel. And we also have to use a lot of water in order to supplement, the capacity that we don't have. So load shedding stage 6 is then also to replenish our emergencies moving forward.
Can you just take us through this particular of generation peaking at Koeberg, the nuclear power station? What's happening at Koeberg in Cape Town?
Okay, if we look at Koeberg, it's over here.
Okay.
There we have 2 units, close to 1,000 megawatts per unit. Currently, unit number 1 is on a planned outage, a refueling outage, and it's planned to be back on return to service by the end of December. We're on track, and we will return 1,000 megawatts. The 1,000 megawatts by the end of December. We will do that.
Well, thank you very much. So I'm just going to try and bring in Mr. Jabu Mabuza, and I'm going to make him stand next to the Minister of Public Enterprises as the overseer of the board and the political oversight. I'm going to end with the big man. I'm going to start here with Mr. Mabuza. Mr. Mabuza, you, with all due respect, not an engineer by profession. I've asked you this question before, and I'll ask it again. Stage 6 now. Are you not failing as the board chairperson in resolving this energy crisis and steering the ship towards resolving this crisis of energy in the country?
I don't think we're failing. I think some of the reasons why we find ourselves where we are is, as Jan has explained, mainly the unreliability of the plant owing to maintenance that has not been done. The situation that we find ourselves today is to make sure it's controlled load shedding. Stage 6 is not calamity, is controlled to protect the system from total blackout. What we have done today is to ensure that we can, when we take stock at around 11, hopefully we'll be able to go back to a lesser stage.
Mr. Pravin Gordhan, you've received a lot of flack, particularly over the past few days. Many South Africans have said that during the era of your predecessors, issues of load shedding were resolved, and that since your return and taking up this portfolio at Public Enterprises, there's been load shedding and you are failing to resolve this particular crisis. Are you failing South Africans in resolving issues of Eskom?
Well, like you said to the chairman and acting chief executive, I'm not an engineer either. That's the first point. The second is precisely what happened in the last 10 years, as Mr. Jan just pointed out, is what we are trying to recover from. There was no long-term maintenance done, and we've repeated that many, many times. So the very commentariat that is saying some of the things that they're saying are the ones who are responsible for the position that we find ourselves in. But we don't want to blame people right now. Right now, we are at stage 6. We have an office called the systems operator, and the job of the systems operator is to protect this 40-odd thousand kilometers of wires called the transmission part, which distributes electricity throughout the country and keeps our households and our economy going. So if you want to protect the grid, there must be a balance between supply, which comes from the generation side, and the demand that is created either by households or in the economy as well. And so what the systems operator said, you generation guys are not giving us enough, so we have to protect the grid. I'm more hopeful that by 11 o'clock tonight we'll move back to stage 4. But from tomorrow we have to ask a lot of tough questions about how do we get what are called partials that are off-grid at the moment or offline. How do we improve the level of maintenance? How do we get better quality of repair work done on some of the boiler tube leaks and other technical problems that we have? And how do we recover from the flooded power stations as well? So our preference is that, and our goal is to get back to normality as soon as we can. And my job is to assist wherever I can. So I've been here for the last 5 or 6 hours to both learn, but also to provide advice if that's necessary. And what we will do much better, I think, as Eskom, is to communicate more frequently to the public. And that's why we allowed this TV camera in here, so that you can see that there's Eskom people here 24 hours a day who are monitoring what's going on, who are taking crucial decisions, which are not necessarily nice ones, but ones that have to be taken in order to protect our electricity supply. But ultimately, we need another 4,000 megawatts of spare capacity to be brought in. And so there are exchanges between our department and the Department of Energy as to how best we do it. The second priority is to move away from diesel and turn those OCGT plants into gas-fed plants. And by that switch, we actually save 50% of the costs as well. So that's also work in progress. And third, we need to do better demand management, meaning that there's a lot that each one of us can do to contribute. And I know this becomes a joke sometimes, but whether we like it or not, this has to be a national effort. And as factories and so on close down for the holiday season, demand will fall. And their summer plan is to make sure that we do the necessary repairs and maintenance now, so that we have a more stable plant from early in the new year.
Mr. Gordon, this may be a technical question as also. I'll ask the acting as the COO to also come in. In future, how do you avoid a situation where you've got enough reserves to avoid a situation where the nation has to be load shed at stage 6?
No, we need spare capacity, number one. Number two, we can't deal with 37-year-old to 55-year-old plants. And that's where the integrated resource plan comes in. So having the resource plan is one thing. Implementing it and taking decisions that will either build gas capability or nuclear capability or wind capability or solar capability is the next step the country needs to go into from next year, and make some key decisions which will give us the spare capacity that we actually require. So we need to build new capacity in the country.
Mr. Gordon, you are a member of the executive in the country. In my little understanding, some areas are national key points, such as your Waterkloof. I'm not sure where you are based, but I know your official residence may be in Waterkloof.
No, it isn't.
Were you ever load shed?
Yes, constantly. I live in my own private residence. I was load shed this morning.
How do you feel about being load shed, and how does it make you feel that there are floods in Pretoria? With those floods, there may be ordinary South Africans, poor people, whom are your constituency as the government of the day, the African National Congress, that are being flooded and are also facing load shedding. Their conditions are deplorable. What does that say to your own political conscience with what's currently happening at Eskom and the conditions those people are facing?
That's why we are here, to apologize to the country, to admit that we have problems that we have to actually deal with, and not be shy about actually admitting them. Be frank with the country about what generation capability we have, and what our alternatives are in the near future. So on behalf of government, I'm really sorry that we find ourselves in this position. And of course, the massive rainfalls that we've had over the last few days, as you point out, has actually increased the problem for many of our people.
Is this a national crisis?
In the power station.
Is this a national crisis?
Well, let's say it is not a big crisis. It's something we are managing. But let's call it a manageable crisis. And that's why we're here. That's why we have the expertise that we have in Eskom. But we need to apply it a little bit better. And we'll show you a picture now, I think, of the flooding at one of the power stations.
Will Eskom go into a voluntary business rescue like SAA?
No. There's other plans for Eskom, which government has very clearly spelled out. So don't take one formula for SAA and apply it to every entity. So you saw PRASA has been placed under administration. So each entity will have its own problem solved in a particular kind of way.
Can you just take us through one of those power stations that has been flooded in one of your provinces?
Camden Power Station. So you can see the water. That's the Camden Power Station, and the water getting into the basement of the power station, which has impacted on the capacity of the power station to produce electricity.
Can I just bring the the engineer here, to speak on the specific issue. What does that say about your design of these power stations? For instance, if that flooding were to happen to every power station in this country that generates electricity, you are looking at a national blackout. You are looking at basically selling the country at that, if that may go.
Don't get into doomsday scenarios.
No.
You don't want to frighten South Africans unnecessarily. So these are all under control. These are being managed, and I think it's not very helpful to try and paint a doomsday picture. What we're saying is that that's an incident at one power station. And there are different incidents at different power stations. So the two conveyor belts collapsing or not being operational at Medupi is not a flooding of the power station. It's a different problem.
Can the engineer answer that question on the engineering of these power stations?
I don't believe there's any defect or any deficiency in the design of the power station. You know, it's been operating Camden for many, many years. This was just a freak. It was a, flooding that you can see that we've experienced. It's I think, if I'm not mistaken, 180 millimeters in a very short period. So that's why we have the flooding. So, and we deal with it. We deal with it as best as we can.
So these are natural disasters that we have to deal with.
Mr. Mabuza, your last bite. Can South Africans wake up in the morning and stage 6 load shedding is something of history?
Well, that's what we're working on tonight. That's why we're here. We had put in stage 6 until 11. We're hoping after 11 to be, as Minister say, going back to stage 4. That's what we're working towards.
Mr. Gordon, your last bite. Have you spoken to the President of the Republic of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, on this current stage 6, and what is the man in Mahlambandlovu and the Union Building saying about this crisis that's currently unfolding in the country?
No, he's very aware, and the one thing about our President is that he keeps in touch with situations like this one or SAA or whichever the next one is, and very much behind the efforts that we're making to recover from this position. And clearly his instructions to us is get out of this position as quickly as possible. And that's why the people that are here are working through the night to do so, but equally people at the power stations who are making their contribution as well. So we're doing our best.
When last did you have communication with him, and when was the last time you gave him an update on what's currently happening with stage 6?
Well, I don't want to reveal too many secrets, but he's been informed a few hours ago.
Not revealing secrets, just taking the nation into your confidence.
No. Well, he's traveling at the moment. So how I communicate is something that remains between him and his ministers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pravin Gordhan. That was the Minister of Public Enterprises, the leadership of Eskom, its COO, and the board chairperson, Jabu Mabuza, and currently still acting CEO until the new CEO takes over next year, speaking about this issue, saying that it's not yet a national crisis. It's a manageable crisis, in the words of Minister of Public Enterprises Pravin Gordhan, and that they're continuously updating the President of the Republic of South Africa. And he said that he hopes that Eskom gets out of stage 6 as soon as possible in order for everything to be okay in the nation, and that there is power restored, and that they are hoping that by morning they are able to reassess and move back to stage 4 and not stage 6.
ENC reporter Samkela Maseko speaking to us live there from Eskom's headquarters, Megawatt Park in Johannesburg, on what is a historic day for the power utility. Not history in a good way, sadly. The utility announcing today, confirming, in fact, that we've now entered fairly uncharted territory, stage 6 load shedding. It is the breaking news right across your screen. Much more coverage for you when Nightline continues. Stay with us.